Welcome back to Thoughts of Ascendance of a Bookworm. Today is episode 5, Baptisms and Strange Fevers. The episode starts with Thule being congratulated for her baptism and appearance by the local mother gang. Mine then tells us that today is the day of the baptism, which we knew was coming from the last episode's chibi segment. Carla, Lutz's mum in case you didn't know, Len says it must be nice to have girls and calls her 4 boys bothersome. But the aesthetics of Thule's hairpin quickly catches her attention, and she is shocked to learn that Mine made it for her. I find it funny that Carla thought Mine was like some one-note character who only had her unusual recipes too. But then a crowd gathers around Thule to inspect her hair ornament. As Mine points out, it is interesting to see just how interested the common folk are in Mine's simple creation. But we then see Gunter being frustrated about having a meeting on such an important day, to which Mine tries to rationalize with him by reminding him that only children can enter the cathedral. However, this fails and Gunter tries to insist that it is his duty to wait outside from Thule. We really are shown how much he cares for his daughters, but he is utterly unable to counter Mine's argument that it's also his duty to go to work and earn money for the family. Then we hear bells ringing, our established tracker of time, and the baptism festival starts. I just want to quickly comment on the outfits of the children. They stand out a lot compared to the others in their primarily white outfits. You'll also notice the blue embroidery that every child has. This is to symbolize the child's birth season, with blue representing the summer months. The reasoning for the colors is tied to religion and the gods, but I won't get into that here. Also, in this shot it is very apparent that Thule's shiny hair stands out from the rest, even though she's further back in the shot. We then get this nice little scene between Mine and Thule, as we see Thule looking clearly nervous, but Mine tells her to smile, and that when she does, she is the prettiest one there, which brightens her mood. The show then gives us a sense of how big the baptism ceremony is in this world, as almost everyone seems to be watching it. I mean, it's so important that the show even used their nice looking buildings, although I'm starting to think that the nice looking buildings just symbolize the wealthier part of the city, as we will learn later is situated near the cathedral. Mine then drags Gunter to the gate for his meeting, to which we find out he was late anyways. Whilst Mine was practicing her writing in the gate, the guard we briefly met in episode 2 shows up asking for Otto. But since Otto is in the meeting, Mine offers to read the document for the soldier. She claims she knows how to read identification papers and introductory letters, something she was taught as Otto's assistant. It's nice to see that Mine's only job wasn't maths, but also documentation work, which does give more credibility to the idea of her becoming a scrivener, which Gunter proposed last time. After finding out that the person is from the province of Bron heading to Glas, Mine states that he will need the captain's stamp and so he should wait in a room until the meeting is done. Mine again proves her skill as she quickly tells the soldier to escort the man to the waiting room for lesser nobles. This is also a small line, but it does tell us that there's also an explicit hierarchy for nobles, with there being lesser nobles, which from now on I'll probably call lay nobles from habit. Following the meeting, which we see lasted until sunset, Gunter hastily takes Mine home. I want to point out that the gate shots have replaced skyline shots for this episode, but we find out that Gunter's jealousy for Otto has momentarily returned, but I'm going to chalk it up to him having to attend a long meeting this time. Whilst Gunter carries Mine away, she quickly reports the merchant situation to Otto, to which she's congratulated for, and Gunter is petty. That said though, Mine claimed that the merchant would need the captain's stamp, but we know that Gunter is the captain, so I don't know how much Otto can do without that stamp from Gunter, but moving on. We then return to the house, and we see that Gunter has cheered up quite a lot as the family talks about Thule's baptism, with her saying that the cathedral was massive and beautiful. But we see that Mine has made some special dumpling soup for Thule's special day. I just want to note a small sub-dub difference here too. In the sub, Effa calls them shapes, whereas in the dub she calls them dumplings. It's not important at all, but I just thought it was a strange little difference. After Thule thanks Mine for all of the things she's made for her, Mine calls Thule an angel, and we get this shot of Mine staring right at us. This is the first shot I noticed aside from the chibi ones to do this, and it just kinda disturbed me a bit. We are then given a scene where Effa and Gunter present Mine and Thule with gifts. Thule receives work clothes and tools, whilst Mine is given a knife to help forage in the forest. But Mine asks if Thule will have to work every day, to which we are told she will only have to work a few days at start with, a nice little system to ease new apprentices into their jobs. When FLN brings up Mine's baptism being next year, the conversation goes to the familiar topic of apprenticeships, and Mine says she wants to run a bookstore, or merchant as they would call it, and we get an important line from Gunter saying he doesn't understand but he supports her. This idea of understanding is a pretty large theme in these early episodes, and I'll come back to it later, but this is when Mine receives her knife, and her mind goes immediately to making wooden tablets, which she thanks ancient China for. I suppose this new tool has opened the gateway to more civilizations. Shifting to the forest, we see that Mine's constitution is so weak that she can't even properly wield her new knife, unlike Lutz who swings it easily. Mine then decides to do what she can and starts stripping the wood into a flat surface. After she's had some practice, Lutz shows up wondering what she's doing. However, he can already tell that it's some sort of replacement for the clay tablets, just from the look on her face. This is a nice detail because it shows us that Lutz already has a good understanding of Mine and what she enjoys. But this level of analysis causes Mine to understandably be embarrassed and she goes bright red. After finding out Mine's goal to create wood tablets, Lutz says he will help her. But this time he's proposing a little quid pro quo, asking for Mine to introduce him to Otto in return for his help. Although Mine warns him that Otto might refuse outright, Lutz says he's fine with that. We now return to the gate, where we see Mine ask Otto how one gets into the travelling trade, to which Otto starts off surprised but quickly becomes distraught as he understandably thinks Mine wants to get into it. And I mean, given the icy atmosphere Gunter frequently gives Otto, it makes sense that he'd be worried about setting the captain's precious daughter down a poor path. But Mine calms him down by saying it's for a friend, and he visibly relaxes. However, once Otto understands this, he says that they shouldn't bother. I like that he felt he couldn't just tell Mine that though, because Otto understands that once Mine sets a goal, she will work towards it with all her might. It's nice to see in this episode just how much people have connected with Mine. But Mine then says she figured that would be the answer, based on how Lutz talked about it, and it was apparent that he hadn't received much support for his dream. Mine then explains that she thought it wouldn't suit Lutz, but wanted Otto to tell him as someone who had lived that life. And now Mine reveals her idea, that he becomes a regular merchant, as he would be able to leave town at times to gather supplies, but he would have a more stable job than a travelling trader. After Otto says he'll meet Lutz on his next day off, Mine gets back to writing, and we now see her realise that slate pencils won't work on wood, so we have our next problem. Seeing some ink, she shoots her shot and asks to be paid in that instead, to which she is flatly refused by Otto. That is, unless she's willing to work for free for the next 3 years. I imagine that slate pencils are pretty cheap, as Otto has shown himself to be stingy. But damn, that ink must be like liquid gold or something. But with that revelation, we reach the midpoint of the episode. Returning to the episode, and Mine tells Lutz that Otto agreed to meet him whilst they were carving more wooden tablets. But after Lutz thanks her, we move back to the home, where Mine stores her tablets in the same place as the firewood is stored. I sure hope they don't get taken for firewood. Mine now ponders the ink situation, immediately jumping to catching an octopus. However, she's rational enough to know that she doesn't even know where the sea is, let alone if there are any octopus and squid there. But upon noticing the ash, she eagerly asks Effa if she can have some, only to be quickly rejected on its multiple uses for thawing ice and making soap. So Mine in response asks for soot, to which Effa gladly says she can have some if she cleans the oven. And I mean the cruelty of it, especially given Effa clearly not wanting to do the job herself. She gives Mine a fun little experience in chimney sweeping pretty much though. But we return once more to the forest, where Lutz and Mine are trying to create the ink. After the water-soot mixture fails, Mine thinks up Kont, which is a mixture of clay and a graphite, and whilst soot isn't quite graphite, it does have quite a lot of similarities with it. After the pencils are shaped, Mine wonders how long they should dry them, to which she suggests firing them. However, Lutz has been down this path before, and warns Mine that they'd better not cause another explosion. They both then quickly clean themselves up with the water before heading home. Back at the house, Mine goes to dry the pencils in storage too, only to find the wooden tablets gone. When she asks Effa if she's seen them, she says she used them for firewood, of course. However, Mine can't accept her reasons for using the planks, and her magic awakens before she collapses. We now get a scene of Mine discussing her fever. She claims it's slowly eating away at her, and she's fading away. Although at this point we still don't know much about Mine's fever, we do know that it is killing her, and we can assume it's what killed the real Mine too. But Lutz shows up, and Mine says her idea didn't work out again with the tablets being burnt. Lutz claims that they did look like firewood, but Mine seems in total despair, stating she's fated to never finish her book. Now, unlike the papyrus, which would have taken too long, or the clay tablets, which literally exploded, I do think Mine gives up too quickly with the wooden tablets. These didn't fail because of the method used, but because of a lack of communication between Mine and Effa. I'm pretty sure that if Mine had explained to Effa that the wood was not to be used for firewood, then after a bit of discussion the situation could have been resolved. But that's not what happens, and Mine instead gives up. However, Lutz reassures her by saying they just need a material that won't burn, and then claiming he needs Mine to get better so that she can introduce him to Otto. Lutz brings Mine some bamboo sticks, but that was also burnt by Effa, leaving Mine feeling hopeless again. She then discusses her feelings with us. The anger she felt from her project being destroyed, much like with the clay tablets, and the frustration of not being understood. Like I said earlier, although Mine's family love her, they don't really understand her, and that leaves her feeling isolated. But also, the thought that she can never have books leaves her feeling ready to die. However, thoughts of Lutz, the one person who has always helped her and understood her, keeps Mine going, and she becomes determined to keep her promise to him, to introduce him to Otto. But just as Mine reaffirms her goal, her fever strangely disappears, and based on what just happened, we can imagine that her fever gets worse when she starts giving up. The imagery that Mine's fever keeps changing sizes is a nice way of looking at it. Perhaps instead of looking at it like a mob reaching 100%, we can look at it like a fire, one that feeds off of Mine's despair and grows or shrinks depending on how much it receives. Now that Mine has recovered though, we return to the gate where Otto immediately asks if she's okay. Mine then confides in him about her struggles and asks what he would do, to which he says he would hire someone to do it. But Mine, obviously not having any capital, asks what she could do, to which she says, persuade them. The conversation then turns to the meeting though, and they decide upon a date. Now Otto says he's looking forward to it considering that Mine is referring him, but I think he's setting his expectations too high, like what he did with the boys last episode. Don't get me wrong, Lutz is a great guy always helping Mine out, and we can see that he clearly understands her and is very empathetic. But he certainly isn't like Mine. But this scene then ends with Mine being confused about the meeting sounding more like an interview. The episode's chibi segment has Mine asking if the meeting will be anything special, to which Ferdinand says he doesn't know. However, he does have a pretty good idea given the stuff he finds out in the future. But with Mine demanding he tell her, the episode ends. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed, and please leave your thoughts below. Bye!